Hey everyone, welcome back to another podcast with The Whole Truth. This is going to be part 4 to the previous podcast that we've done. So it's surrounding the Bread, Juliana and Drew drama. So she went live, her and Bread had an argument and she was sitting in the car and she's just venting to her followers. So if you have just joined us and you haven't seen part 1, I would definitely suggest to pause this one and go back to part 1 so you can hear the things that have been said up to this moment and it'd make a lot more sense to you. I also wanted to say for those people that are trying to join the page and have not been accepted, to be accepted, you need to accept my follow request so I can see where you've come from and I can see like who follows you, who you follow, etc. It's just to keep the page safe. I need to make sure that obviously it's a real account because there are people that I've blocked in the past and they try to make up fake accounts to then join. And that's why I have that rule, so I can like join and make sure it's not like a whole meme account or a hair account or whatever. So you do need to request from your main page. If you request from like a hair page and there's no personal stuff, I'm going to assume that you're shady because you don't want to request from your personal. So I will assume that you've come from like an Instamums account or something like that. If that's not the case, you can message me. I do make some exceptions depending on the situation, but I just thought I'd put that out there because a lot of people that will request and when I deny, they request again and they keep doing it. And in the end, I just got to block you. Or if I request and they just leave me in pending, like I'll leave them in pending. But then when I go back through the request the next time, I'll just remove their requests. And if they keep coming back, then I'll end up blocking them. So, I mean, with my page, I'm not about quantity, it's about quality. Like I like to have followers that feel safe, that they can sit there and make whatever comments they want and not, people come at them about those comments. And that's the whole point of my page, is if you were to leave any comment in any that does not fit the agenda of an Instamum, generally you will be blocked. So here you get to share your opinion and, people aren't supposed to judge you for it. You'll have occasionally a person on the page that will do that, but then I come along and I pull them in a line because that's not how it works. We're there to just gossip among each other, share our opinions and not attack each other for those opinions, okay? Now, the other thing I wanted to address was in my last video, I fucked up. It wasn't the last podcast, the one before that. And you know what? I don't know what's wrong with me, but I completely forgot that Juliana was the one that called the police. And I'm so glad one of you wrote this in the comments because I totally forgot. I was like, yeah, I'd be mad too. Like they called the cops on her and this and that. She called the police. I forgot that Juliana actually called the police. So she went around there. She got in a mad fight with Bread. They got in like fisticuffs in front of the kids. And she actually called the police. And when the police got there, they arrested Juliana. So I don't know how it works in America, but if that was to happen here, like if you called the police and they come to your house and they arrest you instead of whoever you call the police like to protect you from, there's obviously some significant evidence to show that you were actually the aggressor. And you know what? I'm probably going to cop a shitload of backlash about this one and people are going to be like, you're bold for saying like that is so out of line. But I'm going to say it anyway because when have I ever cared about backlash? I really think that Juliana thought that whole situation was going to go down way differently than it did. Like she's a white woman. She's ringing the police to come and save her from a black man and his black family in a shady neighborhood. And she really thought that this was a power play. You know what I mean? Like she knew she was in the wrong, but she called the police because it's a power play for her. She's like, who are they going to believe? And it backfired on her big time. So, I know people will say, oh, you can't be racist if you marry a black man. I'm so fucking sick of hearing that because that is bullshit. You can totally be racist. Like listen to the things that Carissa Collins says. The fuck, you cannot. I'm sorry. I'm sure you'll have your opinion about it, but that's just what my opinion is. It doesn't have to suit the same, like we don't have to have the same opinion, but it's just how I feel. Like it just seemed very strange that if you knew that you had left scratches on your husband's face, would you really call the police? And of course, like, would you expect them not to comply with police when they ask for a statement? Of course they're going to. They're going to bend over backwards, especially with all the shit that's been going on lately. Like, of course they're going to do what the police ask them to do. But you know what? I'm glad it didn't work out in her favor because the whole mentality is so shitty. Like, how can you call the cops on your husband and then get mad that you go to jail? Like, don't attack your husband in front of your kids. Like, it's simple. Very simple solution. But anyway, let's just move on and listen to the next part of this live. So she's kind of like back onto the Bread situation right now.
But he was cuckoo crazy when he got out of jail. He was in there for over a month, so he was...
I just said Brett. I actually meant Drew. I'm so sorry. I'm getting a little bit, heated. I do this all the time. So bear with me. I'm going to have a drink and chill while we listen to this.
Clean when he got out, and he wasn't himself. I think he's just done significant brain damage over the years. He talks about really crazy shit.
Now, people are commenting saying stuff like heroin's all through the jails, and they're actually talking about heroin stuff, and she's like, yup. And then someone else was saying on there how, it can put you in a permanent state of psychosis. She hasn't actually confirmed what he's been doing.
My kids aren't around it.
Someone wrote, man, Brett and Drew, question mark.
That's what I keep saying, but people don't want to listen. I think I know him better than anybody. Every single time he's gotten really bad, me and my parents will say, there's definite damage this time, and this is the worst it's ever been, and it's been this way for several months. And he was bad. When I showed y'all what he was living in, what he did to my garage, that cost me $1,800 to have it cleaned up, that was the worst it's ever been.
So her and her parents, they're talking about all the time, how they think he's got significant brain damage or whatever from the drugs that he's used over the time. And neither of them are looking at healthcare options for him.
And the shitty part is, there's nowhere for me to go. There's nothing else to rent here. There's nothing to buy. If you're going to buy, you're going to be overpaying by over $100,000. Because I've been keeping my eye out.
They're all saying, what about Georgia? Georgia, I'm telling you. Georgia. Move in with Julia. I'm sure Nate's going to fucking love that.
What are the tabs? What are those?
They're talking about heroin tabs. That sound is rain, by the way. It sounds like popcorn, but it's actually rain.
Yeah, it's raining. It always sounds really cool on the Jeep roof. Oh.
Someone said you can smoke heroin too or snort it.
When me and Julia and Cecilia drove to Michigan, when we were going through Indiana, all the farms and stuff, I was like, this is a vibe. I just that's why I get so in my feelings about it, because with Brett, it's dude, you should on your own want to do more. But then when it comes to my brother, what breaks my heart the most is that my family knows what I deal with already in my life. I have 4 kids. That in itself is a very tough job, and I provide for all of them myself, and I also provide an income for most of my family. And for no one to ever step up and help with Drew, or to be we're gonna take him here, my parents, that's your kid. I don't care if Cecilia's 36 years old. If she needs me, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make sure she's good.
Notice how she says Cecilia, and she never says Lena or Zinnia or anyone else. It's always seems to be Cecilia as an example for stuff. It's definitely some favoritism there.
And I don't know. I guess my mind doesn't operate the same way as these people. But that's what hurts me is it's y'all know that I'm already going through a lot and no one wants to help with anything. Yeah, it's always been that way. My brother's been living with me for 5 years. My parents, I don't know how to explain them. They just don't care. I left at 17. In their eyes, once you're 18, you're out, and you're not their problem anymore. But I feel people can dress it up and be oh, well, they don't want to enable him, or maybe they're just tired of it. But it's like I just said, if my daughter, or if my son, if any of my kids need me, whether they're 40 or 16, I have to light the world on fire to make sure they're good.
So she actually admits to having other kids there. There we go.
Because that's how I love my children unconditionally. So it's hard for me to wrap my mind around the fact that the people that birthed this kid don't give a fuck and then put it on the shoulders of their other child. And I have cried in front of them and begged to help me. Because all he wants is, like, I feel like they're, for them to recognize and see him and hear him and to care. I feel like that alone would make a huge difference, but no one listens to me.
Someone said, do they watch your lives?
Exactly. That's what I was talking about, Ashley. I think it plays a huge part in it. Like, childhood shit comes out in adulthood. And I can only do so much. No, my parents don't have Instagram, and I wouldn't give a flying fuck if they did watch my lives, because I'm pretty sure my hate page is sending shit anyways.
Now, I just want to stop that there. For starters, I don't send anything from my page out to, like, family members or anything in real life, and I don't, like, encourage anyone else to do so. This is just a gossip page, okay? We talk about what people do. I don't go real life and, like, start doing stuff like that. Aside from, like, messaging her about goats, that was funny. Come on, it was funny. But I would never, like, message her family members or things like that. That I wouldn't do it. And again, I am not her hate page. I am not a page for Juliana at all. It is just about any Insta gossip. And, you know, right at this moment, unfortunately, Juliana is the one that is the biggest train wreck out of all the Insta mums. So whoever has the most drama surrounding them is obviously what the page is going to be focused on at the time. But generally, you know, that we go through, like, you know, 6 weeks at a time where there's nothing about Juliana and it's all about Crystal. Like, if you looked at the page a month ago, it was all Crystal stuff. It's just whoever is portraying the worst behavior at the time is what people focus on, and that's what they send in. The page is not about her at all. There is, like, 12 different Insta mums that we follow, and, you know, whoever's up to the most crazy crap, they're the one that's probably featured the most. So at this point, like, if you look on the page, like on my YouTube, the reason there's so much Juliana stuff is because she goes live all the time. So there's so much more that people send in about her than anyone else.
And anything I say on live, trust and believe I've said out loud to my family. They don't care. There's no other trigger, anything else that would have happened at 13 for him to start using to numb shit. It was, me and Drew have always been so close from the time that we were fucking babies.
Oh, God. I don't know if you guys, like, just listen to that at the same time as I said, but, like, the way enunciation is everything. Like, just be mindful that is everything, okay? Everything.
And he's very sensitive. He has a very sensitive soul. So that shit fucked him up. Yep. I think that's why, like, I have such a hard time giving up on him, because, like, yeah, he's in control of his decisions, but I don't think he fully understands the consequences of what he does. And do I feel responsible for my parents beating me and abusing me in front of my brother? No, I don't. Yeah, every time I've turned my back on him, he ends up almost dead. He ends up in the ICU. When I was talking about kicking him out, he overdosed. He waited for me to leave the house and overdosed in the bathtub and ended up in the ICU. He's wrapped his car around a tree.
Now, when he ended up in the bathtub, that was when allegedly Cecilia had found him.
He's tried to hang himself. And, like, I remember, I was just telling my friend this the other day because I was so frustrated with my brother, but I was like, I'm trying to, like, show him grace. And I was telling my friend, like, I remember the night he overdosed, he waited for me to leave. And when I got the call, I was at my friend's house drinking and just trying to relax. And I got the call, and I drove home going fucking 90 miles an hour, just screaming. And when I pulled up to my house, there was the ambulance and the fire truck and police officers, and, like, they were getting ready to leave. Like, the ambulance was pulling off, and I didn't know if he was dead or alive. And that fucking feeling, I just try to think about that, like, every time I want to just be done with him, because I'm like, well...
Someone said, who called?
I don't want to feel that again. Brett called and told them that he was a diabetic, so they took their getting to my house.
Now, that is just horrible. Like, why the fuck would Brett ring an ambulance and say he's a diabetic and cover up that it's a drug overdose? Like, what happens if they rock up and they're like, oh shit, you know, he's having a hypo, and they like draw him up like a sugar needle, or if they think he's going the other way and they give him, I don't know which one goes where, but you know, they give him insulin or something. Like, what the hell? You can't do that. Like, you got to be honest with this stuff, otherwise you're really putting his life in danger. That's so irresponsible. Like, I understand, like, he's got a drug background and he doesn't want to get in trouble, but if it comes down to getting in trouble or someone dying, what's really more important?
Brett's fucking weird.
Yes, he is.
They took their sweet time getting to my house, not thinking it was an emergency. Meanwhile, he wasn't breathing.
People are like, why did he say he was a diabetic? Someone said, what was the drug at the time?
I felt the best when he was in jail, which was shitty, but at least I knew he was alive. He's like, I didn't want to tell them that he overdosed. I'm like, are you fucking dumb? Like, it's a life or death situation. You think they give a shit? He took, like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I'm pretty sure it was like 20 Xanax and 2 bottles of wine.
What the hell? But, you know, she's right here, and it's so pointless. Like, the ambulance, they don't give a shit what you've been doing, all right? They're there to make sure that you're okay. They don't give a shit. The doctors are the ones that are going to be like, hey, you know, where'd you get this drug from or whatever. They're the ones that are going to call the police. And you know what? When they take him to the hospital and they do his blood test, they're going to know what he's been doing. So you just look like an idiot when you're misleading them.
Because they literally were like, we don't know how he's alive. But that's every time. He's almost died so many times and tried killing himself so many times, and he never does. And that's why I always tell him, like, you can't leave me. Like, I always joke with him, I'm like, God's not going to let you leave me because he knows if you leave me, I'm not going to survive. No. This was a couple years ago. Exactly, Kelsey. I was livid. I was literally livid. That's what I told him. I was like, you could have just said that he was in the bathtub blue, not breathing. You don't even have to give them any information. But to tell him he's a diabetic and you don't know what's wrong with him, like, that boy is not a diabetic.
Honestly, it seems really, really shady. And, you know, with his whole drug history of what he was peddling, it makes me wonder where Drew got a hold of the Xanax. Like, I'm not making any accusations here, but why else would you act so shady if you found your brother-in-law in the bathtub and you're going to, like, tell him he's a diabetic over the fact that, like Juliana said, you just say he's blue and he's in the bathtub. You don't have to tell him anything. It's just really shady.
But that was probably, like, the scariest night of my life. And that's why now it's just so irritating because it's like, I think that he's just done, like, significant damage to his brain and his mind. And I think that mentally he's just extremely in a dark place. But that's why it's so frustrating because it's like, I don't really, like, my brother isn't really there anymore. You know, it's kind of just like a shell of himself. So it's hard for me to continue being compassionate and, like, show grace to him. When
her follower says, I'm a 911 operator. That call is the difference between life and death. Literally. Like, what do you mean literally? What is the non-literal version of that? Like, what are you fucking talking about, you clown?
I don't even really know who he is, and that's why I get so frustrated. They said at the ICU that they don't know how he made it. I'm like, well, I do. It was God. Because he keeps him alive every time. Probably hears me screaming like, you take him, I'm coming too.
Yeah, I can see why God would panic.
Yeah, like, I think, like, when I look at Drew, like, I always kind of explain him as, like, this, like, broken little lamb. Like, he's just this super sweet, naive, sensitive little lamb. And I think that deep down, like, he wants better, because he wants, like, his normal self wants nothing more than to, like, make me proud and, like, make my parents proud. And so when he feels like he's let somebody down, the way that triggers him, like, he tries to numb his own pain. And
oh my God, that actually reminds me. So yesterday I watched this movie on Netflix and it was called He's All That. So if you're from like my generation, She's All That was like something that came out when I was a young teenager. So when we used to hire like VCRs to watch it on the TV at our friends' houses or whatever. I think like the DVDs had like just sort of come in at that point. But She's All That was like one of them. So like, yesterday when the He's All That one, I seen it was on Netflix, I was like, oh my God, I have to watch this. And the guy on there, Jordan, who is like, her ex-boyfriend is like a singer and he always has his shirt off and stuff. He reminds me of Drew. Like, he reminds me of like if Drew ever became something. Like, okay, the guy in the movie is still an absolute douche, but they just have like the same face. Like, he has that cute face, but you know, Drew's just so like grungy and like dopey that it's hard to like, I don't know, like he just, like, but he has that certain bit of like cute charm about him. The guy, they just look the same in the face. You have to have a look at it.
I'm pretty sure they're in the ignition, but
you're a beautiful human. You inspire a lot of people. That's what someone said.
Well, I'm gonna have to go inside and get the kids' outfits ready for tomorrow. That's the problem with Drew. Like, it goes back and forth between, so like his mind is so weird that I think that he has like multiple personalities in there, and you just don't know which one's gonna come out for the day. But like, there have been times where he's like fresh out of rehab, or randomly like he'll say, like, he'll admit that he used to have a problem, but for the most part, like, he says that he just goes through spiritual warfare and that, like, it's a mental battle for him and he just turns to the wrong things. So, like, it's kind of hard to argue with Drew and be like, you're an addict, because he'll just argue back that he's not. He's just made bad decisions. So...
And she is right here, because if you remember the last time, like I think we spoke about it on the last podcast, but he did come back from jail. Like, he knew he was under the influence of drugs, but he was alcohol tested and he was fine with the alcohol test. He's like, you know, I went to jail for no reason. You can see it in her eyes. She's like, what the fuck? Like, really? But she was just too tired of arguing it with him. And that's the problem. Like, he really needs to, he can't admit that he's an addict. Like, I don't think he realizes that he is an addict.
I don't think that he's ever fully taken responsibility for the fact that he does have an addiction, and that he's convinced himself that he does. He works very hard to convince himself that he doesn't, if that makes sense. I know, but I don't even think it would do anything. Like, I don't know what to do with him. I feel like it's like one of those situations where he's stuck with me for life. Like, I have to babysit him and take care of him, and it's like you're 50 and your mom lives with you and you're taking care of her because she's too old to take care of herself. Like, that's how it feels. Like, when I have my eyes on him 24/7 and I'm going out of my way to like be there for him and talk to him, things can be fine. But this last time, like, he's just mean, so I don't like being around him, and I think he senses that. Thank you. And I know I talk about him to y'all, but that's because, like, you guys have been nothing but supportive over the years, and I got his permission a long time ago. And, like, so...
She got his permission a long time ago, guys. She got his permission. I wonder if this is, like, a written agreement that she's allowed to go on Instagram and just, like, absolutely talk shit about him, say the meanest stuff. Like, everybody hears his business. Like, he's tried suicide this many times. He's been done for DUI. Like, really? He gave your permission. He gave his permission for you to just blast him to... There's 250 people on this live right now, but she has, like, 40,000 followers. So, I don't know. I don't feel like... I think she's just trying to justify the fact that she's, like... you know, putting all his business out there, and people are like, oh, you know, because it's weird. Like, it's not her place to put his business out there. If he has a problem, he doesn't have a problem, it's still not her place to put his shit out there.
So many of y'all have prayed for him in the past, and like, you guys genuinely have a soft spot for him, but as far as like exposing him to like national TV, he'd probably want to kill me.
Kind of, you know, national TV, I guess it's not really the same thing, because but like 40,000 people is still a lot of people. It's still a lot of people to have your business put out there too, especially when it's not, like, it's all biased. It's all in her favour, not in his favour. So I feel like it's probably worse than having it on TV.
That's how I feel. Like, I was going to say it's almost like I'm like hospice for him until he finally finishes the job. But
what did she just say? Did she just say that her house is like a hospice until he finishes the job? What sort of thing is that to say? That is awful. Like, if you don't know what hospice is where you go to die. So you go there and they, you know, just to live out the rest of your days comfortably. Like, if you have a terminal illness, that is so fucked up. And then she's like, until he finally does the job. I just feel like, you know, it's almost like that she's dissociated from what's actually happening here. Like, to say those words and think that it's like funny, I can't understand how she thinks that's funny at all.
And then my mom, like, my friend was saying, well, what happens if you meet a man, like, you know, and he says that your brother has to go? Like, what man is going to want to date you and live with your brother?
I mean, if he wants to date Juliana, he's obviously got some sort of wants to dance with death. So I don't feel like Drew's going to be that much of a problem. Like, if you're going to accept Juliana and the mood swings and the untreated mental illnesses and whatnot, surely Drew's not that big of a problem. Like, I know what I would rather.
I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'll just have to cross that bridge when it gets here. Yeah, he works full-time, and he makes really good money at his job. But he doesn't help me with anything. He doesn't pay me rent or, like, pay for groceries that he eats so much. But the difference between, like, Drew and Bread is, like, with Bread, I would have to ask for the bare minimum, and then I would get backlash for it, and it would get thrown in my face. Or, like, he deserves some kind of cookie for doing the bare minimum, or things that he should already be doing. Whereas, like, Drew,
someone writes,
I just
Bread
have
is
to
a
make
narcissist.
it known to him what I want, because he doesn't really understand or, like, read into, like, the way I say things or, like, my attitude about things. So, like, I literally just have to lay it out for him and be like, hey, could you mop the floors today? Or, hey, could you clean the house today? And, like, he'll do it, and then, or he'll go out of his way to do things for me. So, like, when I left Bread, Drew gets up really early in the morning and will, like, clean up the house before the day gets started, or, like, I'll take the kids to school, and by the time I come back, like, he's done the dishes and loaded the dishwasher and mopped the floors. Like, he'll go out of his way to do things that he knows will help me, even though they're little, but it means a lot. And he does that, like, out of the kindness of his own heart. Like, I have to maybe mention it once or twice, and when he realizes, like, oh, this is something that's helping her, he'll go out of his way to do it, even though it's, like, the bare minimum to most people. Like, with my brother, he just doesn't read people that well, or, like, think like that. Like, his mind is just somewhere else. Like, he put the paper towels in the fridge the other day. Like, when he's just not all there. But I know that he loves me. I know that. So that's one little difference. He pays, and that's another thing I'm really proud of him for, if we want to mention some good things, some good positive things. So Drew's on probation and has this DUI class, and he had a lot of court fees, and then every time he goes in drug tests, he's paid for all of that. He's never asked me to cover any of it, and I was fully thinking I was going to have to pay for it all. So he makes sure that he gets all of that paid for. So I'm proud of him with that.
I feel like sometimes Juliana might forget that Brett is not her husband and he's just her brother. So, of course, he's not going to expect her to be paying his fines or his probation and stuff. But, you know, when you're married to someone and you both get caught dealing drugs and he goes to jail for you so you could stay home with your daughter, there's a little bit of an expectation that when you come home, you're going to help him out. And I'm not saying she didn't do that, because she did, you know, start quite the future for them. However, you know, he's been out of jail for years now, like years, and she was still letting him drive around with a suspended license. And I think he only had like $1,000 worth of fines to pay. So why wouldn't you just pay that? If he's driving your kids around, surely you would just pay that fine, right? To make sure that he's not going to get in trouble. It's like, it's your husband. You don't want him to go to jail again, do you? I don't know. So, you know, with Drew, she doesn't really owe him anything, you know, but with Brett, she kind of does.
But other than that, I don't know what he does with his money. I know he buys like a lot of computer parts. Like, he's really big into making music and computers. Yeah, and he's an amazing uncle. Like, my kids love him. And I know that, like, all their memories of Drew will always be really good. Like, even when they're adults, like, that's their Uncle Drew. Like, Drew is my only brother that's extremely involved with my kids, and my kids love him to death. Like, they get home from school and they all run up and hug him, and before they go to bed, they tell Drew they love him. And, like, even when things got really bad at my other house, like, he was living in the garage, and, like, I didn't even know the garage looked that way. So they've never seen a bad side to him. They only see him as their uncle, and, like, he will jump on the trampoline with them and play outside with them and watch movies and pop popcorn with them. So, like, oh, he has said many times, like, my mom was telling me a couple weeks ago, that, like, every time Drew goes to their house, like, he mentions, like, how much he feels like me and the kids are his real family, and, like, we're just meant to be together. And he tells me all the time, like we're just meant to be together. Like, wherever you go, I need to go.
That's called codependence, and that is not a healthy relationship at all. Not for brothers and sisters.
Medium. Get medium, Nicole. Yeah, his room is fine. His room is fine. I went in it yesterday. Very clean, very well kept. So that's why I kept saying earlier, like, I think there's just brain damage. Like that, where he is severely mentally ill, like depression-wise, because he's very irritable and mean half the time. But I think that he's just battling his own mind. But I'm his home. I've been his home for probably as long as he can remember. And, like, he always tells me, like, someday I'm gonna take care of you. I'm like, yeah, what, are you gonna hit the lotto? Did y'all order your Lazy Hustler? Because it launched tonight. I think you guys already sold out the sage green. The orange is really pretty too. Yeah, so he was diagnosed. At one point he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but then they said that it was psychosis and that they had a hard time, like, I don't know how they worded it, but had a hard time figuring out if it was the drug use or if it was actual, like, mental illness. But I think obviously he's mentally ill, and that's probably why the drug use came on to some extent. Because, like, I'm severely mentally ill. Like, bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder are nothing to play with. So My grandma is mentally ill. She suffers from really bad depression. And then my grandma on my mom's side is a fucking nutcase. So I think that it runs rampant in our bloodlines. And I think that I know that he suffers mentally to an extent. Yeah, you guys always really make me remember. Y'all always remind me how much I truly do love my brother unconditionally. Because, like, I'll be so pissed off, and then y'all will, like, start asking me questions, and then making me think of the good shit, and I'm like, yeah, I do be loving that kid. Like, we're connected at the soul. We always have been. But I just don't really, I feel like I don't really know him right now. Yeah, that would be interesting. I think that my brother has, like, a type of, like, autism, like, maybe Asperger's, because, like I was saying earlier, so he has a hard time, like, with emotions or reading other people, or the way he says things, or the way people will say things to him. Like, he doesn't really, like, understand things in the way you're saying them. So, like, there's been times where, like, Brett and him fought at one point, and Brett was so angry and being so mean to him. And, like, I don't think that Drew was registering that they were about to fight. And I beat Brett's ass. We fucking jumped him. Don't fucking touch my brother. But that's a story for another night.
Now, she's actually already told this story before, but basically he'd come home drunk or something, and Drew and her jumped him, like, beat the absolute shit out of him. That's her words. So that's awesome for the kids to see, isn't it? Like, oh my God, what the hell? But, like, hey, you know, how dare they call CPS on me? Like, I'm a great mum, okay? I don't deserve to have CPS called. Me and my brother just jumped my husband in our family home, but hey, that's normal, right?
But he's so smart. Like, Drew is a fucking genius. That kid, when he was young, built this, like, Lego set that was, like, thousands of pieces. And my mom was like, I remember seeing in the newspaper that it took, like, 12 college students 3 days to put it together. And she's like, your brother at, like, 8 years old put that shit together in one day. Like, so building stuff, he built a computer from scratch. The way he makes his music, like, the way his brain works, he's just so smart. Like, I could never do half the shit he's done. But social skills have always been off. Always. Like, he didn't even talk until he was, like, 4. And I was the only one that could understand him. Like, he had his own little language for the longest. And, like, it was always this big funny joke that, like, Juliana's the only one that can understand him. So, but, like, back then things were different. So I feel like if he were to really be evaluated now, it would be super interesting to see what they come up with and diagnose him with.
I feel like they should probably diagnose her as well, because that'd be simply... it'd be pretty interesting to see what they come up with her. You know, a lot of the time she said, like, when she was 16, she was diagnosed with all these things, which I'm guessing her parents had her diagnosed. But, you know, she's never talked about medication or going and seeing a counsellor or any of those things. She talks about doing it when she's just ruined people's lives, and she's like, oh, you know, maybe my depression's bad, or this is bad, or, you know, she has a fight with Brett, and she's like, I didn't handle that quite right. And, like, she can acknowledge that, but then before you know it, bang, she's, like, back in one of those manic episodes where she's like, no, I was right, you're wrong, you know. So she's never actually taken the time to get herself checked out and to make things better for them. You know what I mean? Like, her and Brett have this toxic thing happening, and it sucks, but, like, I understand her need to keep her family together, because I would want to do the same. But also, you have to realize it takes two to tango. It's not just one person that's making a problem in the relationship. And if you don't both want to get help, it's never going to go anywhere. And I feel like neither of them really want to. I feel like Brett was, like, trying before, but now, like, this stuff's come out, and it's like, maybe Brad is just a shady creep. Who knows? I always sort of felt sorry for him, because he did play the part well, but I feel like, you know, after a while, you're going to feel like you're worthless because you're not having that person to, like, fluff you, you know, the whole love bombing thing that we always see. And he's looking elsewhere because there are women that are going to give him that attention. And Juliana thinks, like, he's so hung up on her because, like, it's his wife or whatever. But I think he's starting to, like, stray from that, and she's trying to, like, gain that control again. And it's just, the whole thing's playing out for the kids. It's awful. And I don't feel bad for her as such, but I wish that she could look back and, like, see the last few years and see where she did go wrong, and maybe, like, try just for her kids to look at, like, therapy and stuff like that. You have to recognize it's not really a normal situation. That's not how children should be brought up. And especially if you've come from a childhood where you've been, like, around, like, abuse and things like that, you would think you'd want to break that cycle for your kids. And she might think, I'm a loving, caring mum, but what they're doing in front of their kids is affecting their children. That is all affecting their children.
Yeah. Has he been diagnosed with Asperger's? See, like, I swear. I don't have insurance. I pay everything out of pocket. I only get insurance when I'm pregnant. Since I'm self-employed, I only pay for Florida Blue when I'm pregnant. Everything else I pay out of pocket. Like, I make too much even for my kids to be covered by, like, the Florida.
So if you make so much money, why don't you pay for insurance? Like, you're a millionaire, but you won't pay for health insurance for your children or your family. That does not make a lot of sense.
Stuff for kids, so I have to, like, all their doctor's appointments, I pay like $309 each.
And that's probably why she doesn't take her kids to the doctors, like, ever. So if you remember the pool incident where one of the kids fell in the pool and almost drowned, and all the fellow was, like, begging her, like, call an ambulance. Have you not heard of secondary drowning? Like, call an ambulance. She's like, it's fine, it's fine. And then she claims she took it to the ER later, which we know did not actually happen.
If he would be open to it, I would consider it. And with what he makes from his job, he could probably pay for it himself, but I just don't see him really open to any of that. Like, he's pretty hard-headed. But I feel like if I brought it up enough and went about it the right way, maybe. Yeah, that's not bad. I think it would be worth it to, like, really have them evaluate him and see what's going on. Yeah, it's expensive. Jeez. I don't know. I couldn't tell you because I had insurance when I was pregnant, but I still paid like $14,000 1 year for one of my kids. And it was like $8,500 for the other. With Cecilia, I had Medicaid, so I didn't have to pay anything because I was fucking broke back then.
It's actually funny that she's talking about this because she's saying, I paid $14,000 this much. There was a live about 3 years ago, like talking about a C-section. She's like, oh, it's my medical bill. She's like, I'm not paying these. I haven't paid any of them. And she told everybody on that live that she has never once paid for any of her medical bills for her cesarean sections.
But still paid a lot of money, even having insurance.
So getting a bill is not paying a lot of money. You have to actually pay the bill to claim that you paid a lot of money.
Yeah, and that's what's funny. Lena and Drew have a very special bond. Like, they love each other, and Lena loves Drew. Oh, Sage is still available? Maybe it was the large in Sage that... I just remember she texted and said Sage was sold out. Okay, Nicole, Sage is still available in medium. Use code Juliana10 to save like 10%, I think. No, I already know. I'm going to go inside and he's going to apologize and I'm going to be too exhausted to even argue and he knows he'll get his car back.
Aren't you sick of this roller coaster though, Juliana? Like, it's just the same thing day in, day out. Of course you're exhausted. If you keep subjecting yourself to it, you're just going to burn out. And in the end, you're going to end up... Like, I can imagine her in jail. Like, you know, they're going to find Red's body somewhere in a fucking lake because she's just lost her shit. Like, I would be drained by this too. I would be so exhausted by this. But the thing is, like, when things are that toxic, sometimes it's just better to cut them off. And, you know, of course, like, Bred needs to see his kids and everything, and that's fine. But, you know, she made all this move and she got this new house that she was renting, and then she just lets him back into the house. And now he just thinks he can come and go as he pleases. Like, it seems like he can just go wherever the hell he wants. Just this morning, I was actually watching a live where she'd given him money to go and buy mulch or something, and he fucked off for like 4 hours in the car. Like, I'd be like, get out of my life. Do not come back. That is just so infuriating. This is a grown-ass man we're talking about.
The largest sold out. Okay. I was so overwhelmed with the response I got about bags on my Facebook today. Oh my gosh. So, like, I always have people message me on Facebook and they're like, I don't have Instagram, and, like, I know you sell bags. And so I was like, I made a post on Facebook and I was like, y'all want me to start doing bag sales on Facebook? Oh my gosh. They went ham on there. I'm like, okay.
If you're wondering what bag she's talking about replica handbags. So like Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton. Basically, they're just a counterfeit handbag that she's buying from like a Russian site. I think the site was like Bag Addicted or bagsaddicted.com, something along those lines. And you can literally tell that she's like, I don't get it from there because, like, you know, that's not me. My seller doesn't offer PayPal. Even though in like a live that she'd done like maybe 2 weeks previous, she was like, this girl's really great because she takes PayPal. And then she was uploading the pictures off the website. Like, that's how people found it, because they just did a reverse search image, and it literally, the pictures that she was posting to advertise these bags just came up from the website that way. Like, you do that tin eye or whatever it is, and it brings you to the website. And it was like a lady in Russia, and she's got PayPal and all the same things. And then Juliana was actually following one of their pages on Instagram. So it doesn't take a genius to work it out. But this girl, she lies through her teeth because she doesn't want her followers knowing that she's whacking like $200 on these bags. You know, some of the bags you'd buy and you get like a free purse, and she's selling those purses as well. So I don't know, but she claims that her hate page, which I'm yet to find, according to her hate page had sent the police around to her house. And the police went around the house and was like, no, it's not illegal what you're doing. You're allowed to sell counterfeit handbags as long as you tell people that they're fake. Really? So I can just go like print out a heap of like counterfeit cash. And as long as I tell people that it's fake, it's okay. That's not how it works at all. And I cannot see a police officer going around to a house and saying, no, it's fine. You can sell counterfeit handbags. I'm sorry that your haters don't like that. Oh my God, there is literally, like, I can't see any police officer saying that, but there is literally like stuff on the FBI website where you can dob in these people for doing it, where they shut down the websites and stuff. And Juliana's like, oh yeah, but I'm not manufacturing them, so it's totally legal. That's not how it works. Are you saying like if I buy drugs from like a big drug dealer and I like sell them to my friends, that's not illegal? Illegal is fucking illegal. Stop being a twat.
It feels impossible to get away from it. Now I understand why people are like, do not have children with a narcissist, because now I get it. Now I fully understand. Oh, I'm not going to apologize for shit, but I have to get the kids' stuff ready for tomorrow for school and get back to all my messages. Thank you, love. I saw you cheering me on my live. And I went live on Facebook today. I haven't gone live on Facebook, like outside of going live on my team page, in like a year. If you guys have ordered a bag from me, go comment on my Facebook posts. Like, drop a little review so people can see.
Yeah, all the it works. Boss babes, do your thing.
To order that Gucci duffel. Dude, I know. I'm literally the worst. Message me again. My DMs are such a mess. Message me again. You can get it tonight because I got orders today, so I can place it with those orders.
People are saying they can't comment on a Facebook for some reason.
Yeah, you have to be friends with me to be able to comment. So just send me a message and be like, add me as a friend. Latest on duffel hold. Are you talking about the travel duffel?
Now, there's a reason why she's done that, because at the end of the day, she could just open it up so that anyone could comment on her lives, but she wouldn't dare, because what if people that knew what the site was, went underneath it, was like, hey, you can get this at bagsaddicted.com. Her followers would be pissed. Why would you go and spend an extra $200 to buy it through Juliana when you could get it yourself and have it shipped directly to you?
Please pack all my shoes in it. Yep, it's hard. It's so hard. That's why I don't judge anybody, because I'm like, bro, I know how it goes. And it's exhausting and it's draining and no one understands unless they've been there. Sam, you're one of my favorite customers. I love you. Yeah, that's what you guys have to message me and tell me to add you. Because for some reason, some people can't add me on there. It says I'm over my friends limit and I'm not even close to being over my limit. I'm away for the most part. I just have to deal with the motherfucker because I got kids with him. That's why I'm so mad. And it's like, I try so hard to be nice. And it's like, you don't give me any reason to be nice to you. You know, I'm tired of being nice. I want to start punching people's heads off, you know?
That's a classy mama right there.
But that's why I don't judge y'all. That's why I don't judge anybody. Because they're not going to fully leave until they're broken down so bad or so sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know what I mean? Nothing you say, you just have to continue supporting them and loving them because your friendship means everything to them. Don't be that friend that walks away because you get frustrated that they went back. I'm telling you, you don't ever want to be in that position.
Yeah, I totally do agree with her there. I feel like you should always be that friend that, is there to listen, because people will learn on their own accord. However, these two have children that they are dragging through the mud with all their nonsense that's going on. So that's why I don't support it, because it's not just about you. When it's just you going back, you're the only person that's really affecting. But when you've got children, you are traumatizing your children. When they're seeing you punch on in the car and then the police come and their mum gets taken off in handcuffs, do you not see that and how damaging that might be to your children? I don't know. Just something to think about. But that is the last part of the live. So I will catch you guys on the page and I'll be back later with a couple more of Juliana's lives that we'll have a chat about. So I'll see you on TWT 3.0. Bye.